Planet of Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of Breaking History. I'm happy to be joined once again by my co-host, Ghost-based Patrick Henry, that I also like to affectionately call Gordon. Gordon, how you doing, man? I see that you got back in one piece from France.
Yes, yeah, man. It's great to be back. It was a great trip. So we enjoyed ourselves.
Sweet. Yeah, cool, man. Did you I guess you went down to Normandy, saw the
Didn't make it to Normandy. I was hoping to, but we opted to do a few other things.
Oh.
And yeah, so it was a good trip though. It was fun. We got to travel all around the area of Paris, and yeah, I mean, it was our second time going, so we kind of did all like the major things the first time. So the second time we just kind of wandered, and it was cool. It was cool to kind of wander around.
Yeah, it's like it's an Uber cafe culture. So there's always places to like sit and have like an aesthetically pleasing experience. Every two steps. So and the history is fun too, right? Like, I mean, just looking at all these old cathedrals and just knowing the wild history of France, it probably just enriches that whole experience way more than your average tourist as well. So yeah, that's
for sure.
Cool. Yeah, we got a lot to go through. I mean, we don't have too much time today. I personally, like I was telling you, over the past week, I've been really pushing hard on getting my new documentary out. My wife and I have been working on a film series called The Hidden Hand Behind UFOs. So we're about to release episode 4. It's going to be like an hour and 15 minutes on Friday. It's going to go through the whole mythos, the creation of the Roswell myth, going back to the original Rosicrucian occultist operation back in the 1940s that were seeding this thing, that then revived it 30 years later. In the late 70s, after it had lain fallow and was forgotten, there was an operation run by the CIA to revive this thing. And when I say CIA, I'm talking about this occult operation around Allen Dulles that we're working with Carl Jung as well to create a new set of organizing myths for the new age that they wanted to invoke. So part of that involves the idea that a new set of religious traditions had to be created around alien gods that would sort of retweak or reframe what we thought were the stories of the Bible and the Quran and the Torah around the idea of psychedelics, drug initiation ceremonies, and aliens that were actually behind Jesus and Muhammad and all of these things. So that it's going to be a crazy story, and I'm looking forward to releasing it. So that's all I have to say. I haven't been focusing as much as I should have on the geopolitical contours, so I'm going to be throwing a lot of questions at you today. But before we do anything, like usual, we'll say a word from today's sponsor. Goldco, I believe, has a new advertisement, so I'll just read that, and then we'll launch into it. All right, here we are. Okay, Goldco. Have you heard about President Trump's impact on gold? Every time Trump's name surges in the headlines, gold goes with it. It happened the day he took office, and it's still going up. Gold doesn't just like Trump, it rallies around him. If you bought gold the day he became president, you'd be up almost $400 an ounce by now. Here's the thing. Gold has been used as a store of value for centuries. The government can't easily manipulate it, and it's known as a hedge against market rise and inflation. How high will the price of gold go under Trump's second term? Will gold continue to break record after record in 2025 and beyond? Learn about an IRS loophole that allows you to diversify your savings with gold and silver tax and penalty free, with a free copy of the gold and silver kit sent directly to your doorstep. Plus, you could qualify for up to 10% instant match in bonus silver. Visit badlandsgold.com to learn how you can add gold to your portfolio. That's badlandsgold.com. All right. Well, so the there's a lot going on. I've been reading a lot about the new announcement of something we've had on the radar for a while. I know you wrote something about this yesterday on the Golden Dome. Personally, I'm not a. I have a lot of trepidation when I hear of things like this, especially on its first iteration under the Iron Dome for North America idea. Knowing what the Iron Dome has been, to think that idea has been influencing a defense and potentially offensive strategy for the entirety of the North American continent, gives me heebie-jeebies. Though I appreciated your balanced assessment that it's not intrinsically a bad thing, depending on the paradigm that's active. But you know, it came in a big way on Fox News, mainstream media the other day when it was announced that this is going to go ahead. I think 175 or so billion dollars will be the estimated cost over 3 years to build up this strategic, hopefully just defensive initiative to protect America from long-range missiles and foreign threats. What's your take on this, man? What could you go through maybe a little bit more of your assessment?
Yeah.
Settle my goosebumps.
I kind of agree with you that I don't love this this narrative deployment, because when you stop and you think about what the purpose of it is, I mean, the idea of an aerial defense array to protect the United States from projectiles. All right, like let's just set aside what the weapon system is and just understand that defending us from projectiles. Okay. I can get on board with that. I can get on board with peace through strength. I can get on board with, defensive posturing. This is a missile defense system is what Vladimir Putin had suggested, a joint endeavor with the United States back in 2000. Mm-hmm. George Bush, told him to pound sand. I guess the reason that I agree with you and I have a little trepidation about this is for a number of reasons. Number one, the idea that we would use this, that we'd actually need it, the countries that would be able to fire a projectile into U.S. airspace are countries that I would list as, outside of maybe like Britain, because it's kind of hard to know where Britain and France are these days. They seem like they are deeply aligned with the globalist agenda. But, China, Russia, India, Pakistan, like the countries that actually would have like ICBMs potentially, I don't view those as countries that we are going to be going to war with anytime soon. I think those are countries that earnestly seem to be seeking a better future in the future. They're pursuing peace, what we would call the sovereign alliance. And so investing whatever $180 billion into something like this seems a little silly. The narrative that we need it kind of communicates it reinforces the idea that we are potentially worried about going to war with some of these countries, right? The posturing is a little strange. It's a little counterintuitive to what I think of when I think of the golden age, and I think of, prosperity, and I think of, it's kind of like a sobering reminder of our like fragile humanity, right? Of like how we really are like inevitably going to have war, because no matter what, we're going to probably fall victim to our shortcomings and our ego, and we probably will in the 100 years from now when we're all dead. The next generation probably will start a war with one of these countries. So maybe it is a good idea. Maybe it is a good idea to have something like this. I guess the questions that I have are the system that we're going to develop in the next 3 years. Are we actually going to use it before the system becomes obsolete? You know what I mean? The Iron Dome is obsolete. Iran has already proven the Iron Dome is obsolete. Yeah. Iran has penetrated Israeli airspace multiple times with weapon systems that they don't even describe as hypersonic. Like they had multiple missile strikes where they didn't even fire hypersonic missiles, and their missiles still penetrated Israeli airspace and then harmlessly fell to the ground because their targets were not like actual buildings. Their targets were just to demonstrate that they could. The whole purpose of the exercise was just to demonstrate they could penetrate the Iron Dome if they wanted to. So the Iron Dome, by the way, is like 30 or 40 years old. So it's like an obsolete.
Well, that's my concern. Like, are they using the same technology that they're planning on Probably not. I mean, I'm guessing that the idea would be to use, like, we know of certain glimmers of certain, like there's something called the Space Treaty in 1967 that made illegal the weaponization of space, which the U.S. signed onto. But these are governments. If you have private systems, or at least pseudo-private systems, front groups that are controlling that infrastructure, I don't know if they have to abide by the Outer Space Treaty that JFK had sort of pushed forward to, but that was finally passed after he died. I don't know about that, but I know that there's evidence of like directed energy weapons. We saw this with certain cases, certain demonstrations in Hawaii, that it seems like directed energy beam weapons, whether they were on drones or whether they were on satellites. I'm not really too sure if that work has been done. Do seem to be somewhat in place. So if you're dealing with a new space-based aspect of weaponization on top of more advanced modern systems, I don't know, like, because I agree with you. If you have a paradigm of peace, then it's fine to have a defensive infrastructure. But if you have, let's say, a bad government in the future, then this infrastructure built up could also be used both offensively against nations that otherwise shouldn't be our enemies, but also it could be used against the American people too, if you build this thing up and then just hand it over to so it's a big gamble that we're not going to have bad governments in the future that could then utilize this type of system, right, of command and control.
Yeah,
so that's my concern. I'm not a gambling man.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I see what's being done here, this deployment. I see the only value I really see in it, aside understanding that maybe there's more to this defense array than we understand. Maybe there's technologies that they're not disclosing that we are not going to understand that really are going to be useful in the future. The things that I question about it is, let's just assume for the sake of argument, this thing really is legit and it really is going to be great and useful for America. Is this something that you disclose publicly? Is it something that, or is it something, a technology that you just have, and you just use it if you ever need it, So is there a tactical advantage to actually publicly disclosing that you have this technology, or you're building the system? It leads me to wonder whether this is just a narrative deployment for narrative warfare, and therefore it's being used for an ulterior motive, such as an effort to denuclearize the world. Like, maybe it's like, okay, we all have golden domes now, and now nukes are now totally useless because we can't even nuke one another. So why don't we all just throw our nukes away? Like, maybe that, if that's where we're going with this, and maybe the Golden Dome isn't even being built, it's just being communicated that it's being built and being leveraged as like a bargaining chip to get us to do denuclearization. Or maybe it is built and then leveraged to get us to denuclearization. Like, I could see that as like a stepping stone to get to a greater future. But yeah, I mean, on its surface level, this just feels like more neocon bullshit to keep us in the forever, like, trapped in the forever war paradigm. And I understand what Trump's doing with it by calling it a golden dome. He's throwing the Trump branding on it. He's probably triggering certain people. But, at a certain point, we just have to confront this neocon parasite that we have festering in our government. And we have to throw these clowns into a cage and put them in a prison cell because they're all a bunch of war criminals and bloodthirsty sociopaths.
I can get behind that. On that note, here on the defensive point, or in defense of this strategy too, I'll throw in my 2 cents too, because you reminded me that back in the day, Ronald Reagan, I think it was 1983 in May, he gave a speech on air calling for the Strategic Defense Initiative to be launched, right? And originally, I watched that speech. Not when I was not originally. I was a baby, but I rewatched on YouTube recently for the making of a film I was doing, and there was something really positive about it, because originally when he got on the air, and I, there was a big fight between the Neocon faction around John Poindexter and others in his administration, and Richard Pearl and all of these like Neocon creeps around Zbigniew who had latched on like a parasite. And then you had like real patriots around him too. And there was a fight to change his speech, because in his speech originally, it had called for a cooperation between the USA and Russia to co-develop, co-build this strategic defense initiative with the idea of next generation plasma-based lasers that would be installed both on the Earth, but also in satellites that would be powered by new principles like fusion that would be driving these high density, high powered lasers that could then deactivate any nuclear missile that would launch, any ICBM that would launch, or submarine based nuke that would launch anywhere on the Earth. And so the idea was you'd have a multi-phased like system that would highly reduce, like, and create a 90% effectiveness, because you could have like, you know, near light speed reactions with high precision to deactivate, to destroy any nuke before it made it to its target, making strategic nuclear warfare completely impossible. But the thing that would have the secret sauce that I noticed, because that was removed from his speech, but then Reagan immediately inserted his speech, as the story goes, last minute back in, and then he inserted that section that was removed, where he then called for that cooperation, where the Russians and the U.S. would work in common brotherhood, for this idea to not have to duplicate energy intensive, time intensive science and engineering, and could share these things. So the idea would be, you know, okay, if you got both people who are enemies working on something that would transform the science of the atom into something defensive and mutually beneficial for everybody, then that would get rid of the Cold War without anybody needing to suffer. You know, like millions of Russians disappeared. They died in the 90s. They were starved to death. That loss of life would not have been needed. And you could have began like a real trust building process with a new paradigm focused on win-win cooperation instead of this Manichaean zero-sum thinking of the Cold War. So I like that notion. And now, I mean, I was just reading today as well, you had on the Times of India the announcement that there's this asteroid that they just detected. You know, we got this big asteroid radar grid, not radar grid, but observational grid in space. And despite it being a pretty impressive grid, there's a lot of asteroids floating around, so many. And they just announced that there is one that caught them off guard. It's the size of like 3 football fields. It'll pass the Earth. It's not going to hit us, but it'll become, I think it'll move between the Earth and the moon. So it's really pretty close. And were this thing to actually hit or be on a trajectory to hit the Earth, we know that 99.9% of all the species that have ever existed are not here right now. Because they didn't have they didn't have advanced science. They didn't have, you know, the ability to do those things. So feasibly, I could see also that type of infrastructure being useful if you have nation states working together on it, to also protect humanity and the Earth from asteroids and other things too down the line. You know, at some point, one will hit us or will come towards us, and will we have the foresight to put into place systems that will detect them, so we won't be caught off guard like we did for this one that's going to pass us in a few days. You know, we need many months, if not years, of preparation if a big one is moving at us. And then also some power available to us to be able to shift its trajectory, either blow it up or move it to another trajectory so that it bypasses us. These are big, like, existential questions that are multi-generational, that I think this kind of infrastructure could feasibly play into in a positive way. But we have to get rid of this neocon Hobbesian paradigm first for that to work. Like, we got to be able to break that, as you pointed out. So that's my thoughts that you inspired in defense of the possibility of a good use of this golden dome idea, though I don't like it.
Yeah, and like that's what I mean when I say there could be other uses for this that they're not being discussed or disclosed right now, and that's fine. Yeah, I mean, okay, it's a cool, neat little like paradigm, whatever, narrative deployment. It's just hard for me to get excited about stuff like this because I feel like you only get excited about something like this if you are worried about us going to war in the future. And I'm just not. I'm not worried about us going to war in the immediate future. I mean, 30, 50, 70 years from now, sure, like the world will look very different then. But, I just think the entire world is so absolutely sick and tired of the US government, like like the establishment, that the public mandate to just completely eviscerate the Washington D.C. governmental apparatus has metastasized and manifested, materialized, and it's I feel like this is a feather in their cap. This is something that is going to get them excited. This is something that's going to get the John McCains of the world really excited.
Right.
And it's just hard for me to get excited about something like that. So,
Yeah.
If we find out something different about this and it suddenly has like a multi-use capability, like what you just described, awesome. But as solely a defense array that's used to defend us from ICBMs being sent at us from China, I just can't get excited about that. It's just not. It's not that cool to me because I don't think it's ever going to happen.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so I think the consensus is in here generally that we're not big fans of the Golden Dome. All right, not so far, not big fans. Okay, so next thing up, the Putin-Trump talks. I know you've said a few things about this in your previous shows. I didn't hear your remarks about your thoughts. Personally, I'm not too sure. There's a lot going on around this. You got the weird Istanbul talks, which don't seem to, they were it seems set up to fail. Zelensky was saying, basically he'll not concede 1 inch to anything Putin is requesting. You got Putin, who's made the point that if they don't get some breakthrough soon, things could escalate. And what is currently 4 regions of Ukraine that have joined Russia could grow to up to 7 or 8 new oblasts. And things could accelerate quite a bit. There's a lot of noise around this. Again, I see it hopeful that and nice that there was this good 2-hour phone conversation with Trump and Putin. Don't know if anything really came out of that per se that's concrete, but it's good. The Russian delegation, I don't think they came up with anything. I don't even know if they met, frankly, with Zelensky in Turkey. But what's your take on the developments? Oh, and also Europe, right? Like Europe is doubling down on the crazy for the most part. And they're even talking about a new military bank. I was just reading about this, modeled on the World Bank to provide for financing outside of the budgets of the national budgets of the different governments of Europe to provide funding for a giant industrial militarization strategy. I don't know if that's even possible. Like they're pretty incompetent and they don't seem to be generating anything industrial or of competence at all, let alone military equipment. But that's what they're talking about. And most of it would probably be, I suppose, just to buy. If they were able to get the money, they'd probably just be buying it from Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and the U.S. military industrial complex anyway. But what do you think about all this stuff here?
Well, I mean, my general sense is that what's going to end up happening. Well, first of all, as far as the Trump-Putin thing, I was prognosticating that we were going to see Trump and Putin meet in the Middle East last week. In hindsight, I think I probably was getting a little ahead of myself because it seems that the purpose of last week's trip was to really solidify or rebrand the Arabs for the American people. So that everybody kind of views the Arabs the way that I have been viewing them for years, which I think has now happened. I think everyone kind of saw the way they welcomed Trump, the way that Trump had this kind of emotional back and forth with the Saudi crown prince. I think people get it. I think people understand that these guys are not the characters that we were told they are. And I'm talking about kind of just Arab Muslims in general. Where my generation was raised to be afraid of them and view them as something that is irredeemably evil and that has to be destroyed. And we can now say definitively that that's just not the case, and that we can move forward confident that we're going to be very strong allies with them. And there's a lot of mutually beneficial things that are going to occur in terms of trade and mutual investment and peace making activity, so to speak. And I think that's what last week really reinforced, and that's what the trip, I think, achieved from an optics and narrative standpoint. We did get a lot of teasing last week that Trump and Putin were going to meet in Turkey on the sidelines, and that didn't end up occurring. We did get the phone call on Monday after, Rubio, I guess, went and met with, and Wickoff went and met with some of the Ukrainian people. My general sense of where this whole thing's going to go is that the Ukrainians are not going to surrender. Like, Zelensky's not going to surrender. We've gotten rhetoric out of Marco Rubio that, the U.S. is preparing to just kind of walk away from the situation because they're getting so frustrated with how underhanded and two-faced the Ukrainians are behaving, where they're saying one thing and then doing another, and they're not negotiating in earnest, and they're not being honest with the Americans. It doesn't sound like. So my guess is that Zelensky's handlers, who would be the American deep state, Five Eyes plus, they're not going to let Zelensky surrender. They're not going to let him make peace with Putin. I think Trump understands that. Trump knows that. I do believe Trump when he says that his objective is to preserve as many lives as possible. I think Putin feels the same way. But ultimately, what Putin said is we have to address the core root causes of this conflict. And that is, in my opinion, the CIA-controlled government in Kiev that was installed in 2014 after the Maidan coup, but certainly goes back many generations before that, to back to the Cold War and before the Cold War, frankly. The denazification exercise that Putin has referred to so many times, which I don't think is just I don't think it ends in Kiev. I think that denazification thing is like a European continent exercise. That doesn't mean that Putin's going to invade the European continent. Although I do think that when the deep state media makes that fear mongering, I think they're actually being a little serious, and they might not be completely wrong when they're like, Putin is going to invade the rest of Europe after Kiev. I think in their minds, what they're thinking is, if he's serious about denazifying Europe, that's going to require coming to Brussels, because all the Nazis are in Brussels, right? Like running the EU and running NATO. Frankly, I don't think that's how that's going to go down. I do potentially see Putin going into Kiev and arresting Zelensky and all of his government officials, because they are war criminals at this point. And Putin has said that. He said that they're all war criminals. I think at a certain point, the negotiation is surrender or die. And they know if they surrender, they're going to be prosecuted as war criminals and probably spend the rest of their lives in prison, if not executed. So, they may choose the latter option of fight to the death. So how this all plays out, I don't know. I could see Trump and Rubio and then just walking away and just being like, you know what, Putin, go do what you got to do, because these guys are not negotiating with us. Che Bose, I saw, was reporting about Zelensky's leading opposition in Spain was assassinated yesterday. Did you see that?
I did. Yeah, the former assistant to Poroshenko was just killed. Yeah, he was gunned down in front of his house or something.
Yeah, so I wonder if that's going to become common. I wonder if these Nazis are going to start lashing out at anti-regime voices in Europe and just start murdering people.
Yeah.
And that then is going to accelerate the public mandate to deal with the problem in Kiev. I see this getting way uglier. The TLDR, the short answer is that I see this getting way uglier than it is right now. Hopefully that's just all narrative and not kinetic. But it's the idea that this is just going to be peacefully resolved and we're just going to all hug it out and go back to the way things were is just not feasible in my mind, because I think this is an existential conflict for a lot of people on both sides. And the only way to resolve an existential conflict is that one side gets destroyed and the other side prevails, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's certainly bad optics. I mean, even Zelensky coming out and having like vocalized when you had world leaders, including members, world leaders, including members from the West who were present in Russia during Victory Day, the celebration of the defeat of Nazism on May 9th or May 7th to 9th. But the big parade was on May 9th, and he was calling out in the days beforehand or threatening a strike, an attack on Russia, on Moscow, with world leaders present. That was really bad optics that happened. And then he restated it, that was re-threatened. So you've got a certain sloppiness now going around potentially, launching executions of political leaders who are outside of Ukraine in Europe as well. We know that there's already I think it's called the Mikrovits or the Mitroyovits. I can't pronounce it. This Ukrainian hit list pretty much. Which has already been public. Everyone knows about this thing that has a number of journalists, of public figures, political figures. Scott Ritter's on it, many others. Which is basically it's a kill list. Dugin's daughter was on it. She got murdered. Another journalist, a Russian journalist, was murdered in Russia, who was on the list, and they celebrate. They like trophies, or a scavenger list being checked off whenever somebody dies. So far, the murders have only happened in Russia. But that being said, again, it's hosted on a server tied to the CIA. I don't think that's ever changed. And again, it looks really bad. So could this be the sort of ugliness that is needed to finally get people to become appropriately disgusted by the Nazis and blatant killers that are active in Ukraine and Kiev? I don't know if there's anything at this point ugly enough to wake sleepers up to what should have been slapping them in the face already with ugly genocide. But maybe it is. On a quick side note, somebody just sent me this. I'm going to just play because we just talked about it. So I'm just going to quickly play it. It's the official the Chinese Foreign Ministry side note, but just put out an official statement in regards to the Golden Dome, saying that this means the launch of a new weapons race. So let me just quickly play this thing. It seems very short.
所谓的金色穹顶计划旨在构建不受任何约束的全球性、多层次、多领域导弹防御系统。该计划公然提出大幅增加外空作战手段，包括研发、部署轨道拦截系统，具有浓厚的进攻性色彩，违反外空条约倡导的和平利用原则，将加剧外空战场化和军备竞赛风险，动摇国际安全与军控体系。美国奉行本国优先，执迷于谋求自身绝对安全，违反各国安全不受减损的原则，损害全球的战略平衡与稳定。中方对此严重关切。我们敦促美方尽早放弃发展和部署全球反导系统，以实际行动增进大国战略互信，维护全球战略稳定。
Oh yeah, that was sorry, I was muted, and I apologize for anybody who was just listening and not watching the show because there were captions. But basically, yeah, that was the official statement of the Foreign Ministry of China just released this morning, calling out. Yeah, I mean, so this is their open remarks. Now we know that things are decided and discussed back channel that don't always reflect what's being put out openly or for the public. However, that was the messaging that they're putting out right now for the public. Is a warning that this breaks the outer space treaty, that it calls for the weaponization of space and a new weapons race that includes space, that they see as an existential threat, and they called for a restoration of diplomatic trust building, basically, between states. So that's what the Chinese just put out. So good. I just wanted that to be just put out there as well, and I didn't watch it yet, so that was useful for me too.
Yeah, and this is kind of exactly what I would expect, like the diplomatic response in a normal situation. And again, like you said, there could be back channel discussions. This whole thing could just be a narrative back and forth in order to get to some sort of like negotiated peace deal that doesn't require any sort of golden dome, right? Because like the point I was making before is they say it's going to take 3 years to build this thing, right? So they're going to spend the next 3 years building a missile defense array that's designed to protect us from what? The ICBMs of today. That means that all of your adversaries who would be planning on attacking you anyway, the people that you're building this to defend yourself against, they're going to spend the next 3 years developing the next generation of weaponry that can penetrate this thing that you're building, and they're going to spend the next 3 years studying whatever it is you're building so they can beat it. And that is the essence of the arms race, right? It's like you build. Like that's the whole essence of the escalation. You come to the battlefield with a shield. They figure out a weapon system that's going to beat the shield, right? And that's just going to drive the next iteration of warfare. So, I agree with what the Chinese official was saying in that video, where it's like we should be looking for opportunities to engage in diplomacy and trying to build mutual trust, because what the Trotskyite neocon Republicans want to do is they want to foment a war with China, and creating hostility through exercises like this one is exactly how you take those steps towards war.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, absolutely. On that note as well, you hear that Michael Ledeen just died?
Michael Ledeen? No,
yeah.
I didn't. Who's that?
Hardcore neocon fascist type Trotskyist.
Really?
He's the one back in the 80s who played a big role ushering a lot of the neocons into the Reagan administration. And he called for he actually wrote an essay in the 90s calling for universal fascism. Like, he's a self-professed universal fascist. So he's
really?
very
open. I'm looking at him right now.
Yeah. He's like a follower of James Burnham, the promoter, also Trotsky's former lieutenant, that James Burnham, who wrote The Managerial Revolution and called for a new managerial class of engineers and scientists to manage the world under a new world order. And so this guy Michael Ledeen was sort of groomed by this clique that came in with Zbigniew back in the Carter and Ford administrations, and then kind of still hung on throughout Reagan, and then really made their revenge come back with Cheney and Bush. But he just died. So hopefully that's a symbol or an omen of broader changes.
I hope so. I'm just skimming this guy's Wikipedia, and it looks like, what what a resume. He's sitting here looking like he's looks like he says he was involved in the Iran-Contra affair. He was working with the Israelis on some CIA covert operations. He was working with Adnan Khashoggi, which is Jamal Khashoggi's father in the 1980s. He's the famous gun runner. Man, this whole thing is just, he does not seem like a good dude, that's for sure.
No, yeah, he's slimy. He's super slimy and super hyperactive. Like, he's just everything bad that happened in the past 40 years, this guy's like somehow involved everywhere.
That's what it looks like. I'm just like skimming all these famous like incidents are being listed like throughout his Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So so we've got the neocon rattlesnakes that are still out and about, biting away with their weird pseudo-Gnostic religious, I would say satanic underpinnings. You got those guys, and then you got human beings wanting to have a future. And on that note, there were some meetings that happened. Some deals were signed last week. U.S. and Saudi Arabia signed deals. The UAE, Qatar, others played a big role. I've got, I'm sort of, I'm on the fence on some things. Certainly anything that deals with economic commerce, cooperation is really good in my mind, much better than the alternative. Saudi Arabia has been on the fence. The offer has been on the table to join the BRICS for a long time. They vacillated. It seems like they've moved away from that position. but they're still operating in a cooperative strategy with the East and trying to also be a bridge East and West. A lot of the contracts are military. I know from the $600 billion deal or $650 billion deal between Saudi Arabia and the US, a lot of it was military. A lot of it was AI, Silicon Valley AI stuff. I don't know how much of it was productive manufacturing per se that I really value. I'm waiting. That's what I'm trying to map out, is like all of the seriously intrinsically valuable productive manufacturing rehabilitation. That's my passion. So I don't know. I don't know how much of that for either Saudi Arabia or the U.S. was of that sort. But what's your take so far on some of those developments?
Well, one of the ones that I was reading about that I did a special, I did a coverage of it all yesterday, and I read through all the specifics of the agreements. And the UAE is investing $4 billion, for example, in Tennessee to build a new aluminum smelting factory. It's the first aluminum smelting factory that we've built in the United States in 40 years.
Good.
And building this one smelting factory is going to double the output of aluminum in the U.S. Literally double it. That is how little aluminum that we produce in the United States, is by building a new factory in Tennessee. We are now doubling our output of aluminum overall.
Wow.
So that is very encouraging, and I think there are a few other examples of that occurring. It does seem like a lot of it is military, but the way that I see the Saudi military deal being structured, it's $142 billion military deal, like approval of military sales, the largest defense sales that we've ever approved. And I think it basically is going to make the Saudi military like one of the big militaries in the Middle East, which to me empowers the United States military to exit the Middle East, knowing that we have a reliable partner there that actually earnestly wants to maintain peace, because it benefits them to have a peaceful, stable region there. I don't think we can trust the IDF to be like the cool heads in the room, right? Like to be the adults in the room, so to speak. They have proven that they are not adults and they cannot be trusted. They are the emotional teenagers who fly off the handle whenever their feelings get hurt. So I think the IDF has proven that they are not reliable partners, and I wouldn't even call them allies at this point. I think they are just liabilities. They're a liability for us. So having Saudi Arabia there, I think, in a really strong military is the real counterbalance for any other potential rival, whether that's Iran or Turkey, or whatever it is. So I see that as really positive. I see that as a positive development, like the military deal, because we don't have to be the world police anymore for the Middle East. We can leave the Middle East and we can look at Israel and say, if we're leaving you with the Muslims, you better get along with them. Figure it out, or don't figure it out, and they're gonna blow you to hell. But figure it out. And that kind of takes us to Israel and everything that was happening there. This I can play this video. I've played this a few times on most of the shows that I've been on, but it's only a 40-second clip. This is the clip that nobody else has really posted this or covered this, but this is the one that really stuck out to me the most from last week. Was this one right here.
Muscat throughout the peninsula, places like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Doha, Muscat. The transformations have been unbelievably remarkable. Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that.
And as Trump is saying all of this, of course, Netanyahu is announcing, this is last Tuesday, that they're going to be doing this like very aggressive new campaign in Gaza. They're going to take over Gaza and they're basically going to kill everybody and permanently rule it. That's effectively what they've communicated. And so obviously Trump is throwing shade at Netanyahu in that moment. That's who he's talking about. And, you know, what's interesting is listening to that clip, but then also this clip, which is this one.
And with the historic Abraham Accord tribute to your country. And it will be something that's really going to be very important for the future. A special day in the Middle East with the whole world watching when Saudi Arabia joins us, and you'll be greatly on time. And that's what I want, and that's what you want. It's backward and into havoc, mayhem. The only thing still standing between this region and its unbelievable potential was a small group of rogue actors and violent thugs seeking constantly to drag the Middle East backward and into havoc, mayhem, and indeed into war.
Is he talking about the Israelis there, or is he talking about Yemenis?
Destructive forces.
I think he's talking about the Israelis. I mean, that's like it's kind of plausible deniability because he kind of mentions Iran in passing. But that wasn't the clip. I don't have the exact clip that I was looking for, but it was the one where he calls out the neocons and the warmongers. So like he's calling out the neocons and the warmongers, and he's basically saying that, you know, the Republican Party basically, and he's basically saying that they're the reason that the Middle East has been in conflict, and that just seems like diametrically opposed to the idea of building the Golden Dome, right? So it's like those two things just don't seem to align. However, I want to show a few things. So there's that Pavko, I think is his name. He's the guy that in Spain has been murdered. He's the Poroshenko's assistant. His name is it Pavko?
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. So that guy's been killed. That's related to Ukraine, of course. But then you have this. So this is like an EU delegation that's in the West Bank, and they're there to like inspect like what the hell's going on with Palestine, with this like the humanitarian aid that's being denied to Gaza. It's officials from Britain, France, the Netherlands, Spain, Norway, Italy, and Canada. And then the IDF fires on them when they're in the West Bank. Like, watch this.
جيش الاحتلال يطلق النار على الوفد خلال تواجدنا يطلق النار بشكل مباشر هي.
Wow.
And there's even like another angle where there's like bullets like ricocheting like past them, and the IDF has come out and admitted that this is real, and they're blaming the diplomatic mission, the delegation, saying that they went into an area they weren't supposed to go into, and that was the justification for firing at them. And it's just like, dude, they're getting very, very like bold. And when I say they, I'm talking about Israel. I'm talking about the IDF. Like they're getting very, very like they're acting like bad guys. Like they're acting like the villains in like a caricature of a villain in a Hollywood movie. If you go on X and you just look at all the Israeli influencer accounts, and we can certainly do that. They've just been, for the past 2 months or month, they've been like red-eyed, like frothing at the mouth about how like killing all the children in the West or in Gaza is totally justifiable at this point because they're all terrorists. And the whole thing is justifiable. And, you know, they really are showing their true colors in terms of trying to defend whatever the hell it is they're trying to do there at this point. You also have this really strange push from people like all of the usual suspects, the Mossad, as I call them, Mossad media, you know, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, like all those people have been talking nonstop about Qatar for the past 3 weeks and just posting nonstop about Qatar. Qatar did 9/11. Qatar, like everything they say about the Jews is really Qatar. Like Qatar money controls DC. We can never be friends with Qatar. We can never trust Qatar. Do you remember that Saudi Arabia did 9/11? Like, do you remember that? Like, do you remember that Saudi Arabia and Qatar funded ISIS and created ISIS? Do you remember that? And it's like, man, like this is full blown panic mode in terms of the narrative they're putting out there. Meanwhile, you have this from Jerusalem Post. This is being discussed all over the place, but could Syria's Ahmed al-Shara, which is al-Jalani, be Israel's next unexpected ally? And my answer to that is absolutely. I think that's exactly what's happening. I think al-Jalani, who is the ISIS leader, al-Qaeda leader, head chopper, has been professing his love for Israel for months now, which is very, very strange. Very, very narratively speaking, that doesn't make any sense, but it actually makes perfect sense if you understand who probably created ISIS. So anyway, you have all that happening. You also have, you have the situation in Israel just totally deteriorating because they are, they haven't been allowing humanitarian aid in Gaza for like 50 days. It's gotten to a point where Trump is demanding that they like allow it in. There's been efforts, like I just showed you the video of the Europeans who sent a delegation there to investigate it. It sounds like Trump may have sent some people over there to investigate it. We saw Trump totally disrespect Netanyahu by traveling to the Middle East, not going to Israel. You had Pete Hegseth was scheduled last week to actually go to Israel while Trump was in Saudi Arabia, and Trump canceled the trip and told Hegseth to come to Saudi Arabia with him instead. JD Vance was then scheduled to go to because JD Vance is over in Italy at the Pope's inauguration, so he was going to fly to Israel yesterday and go visit them yesterday to kind of do the first official visit from the Trump administration, and Trump canceled it. Trump said, no, you're not going. And the reason they're not going is because I think that Trump is finally publicly going to be like, we're not going to align ourselves with this stuff, because the direction that Netanyahu is going in, as I've been saying for months now, over a year, is that he can't stop. He's not going to stop. It's going to be a war with Iran no matter what. No matter what Trump negotiates with Iran, Netanyahu's getting his war, and the Republicans are going to back him on that. I have no doubt about that the Republicans are going to back him, at least some of them. It'll be interesting to see if the Republicans in Trump's administration back Netanyahu. I think at least a few of them will. And that's going to cause the official formal rift between Trump and the Republicans. Trump's going to have to divorce himself from the Republican Party, I think. And that's going to be good, because that's going to spell the end of the Republican Party as we know it, which needs to happen if we're going to save this country from the political sociopaths who have taken it over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really wish, how much money does the U.S. give? I know that since Israel's founding, the U.S. has given like $320 billion in aid, most of it military, for Israel. But do you know how many billions every year is given by the U.S. to Israel for its military expenditures?
I think that's the official number. I think the official number is like 300 and some billion. It wouldn't surprise me if there's like a lot of money going elsewhere. If there's like money, there's like
the black budget.
Black budget, like Iran Contra, like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the weapons that were being sent to the cartels in South America, as Colonel Tanner Watkins has explained, were all Israeli-made weapons. It's all like Israeli-made weaponry. It's like so I think this stuff is really transnational, and there's a lot of black budget stuff that's going on with it, and a lot of these trafficking networks, I think, are tied to Israel, mostly because the banking system there is just so conducive to money laundering. It's apparently very easy. It's the best country to launder money in, because they have such lax banking regulations.
Yeah, yeah, and very friendly to pedophiles too. The bonus,
extremely friendly to pedophiles. For those who don't know that, they openly encourage convicted pedophiles to return to Israel, and they will not extradite you to your host country for a prosecution.
Yeah, I'm just reading now on the U.S.
which I assume is the reason the Republican Party loves Israel so much.
Yeah,
of course.
Uncomfortable laughter on my part. Yeah. It says here $12 billion since March of this year approved for U.S. funds and weapon sales to Israel. Yeah, I mean, I just wish a lot of that could just be like cut off, even if we have the unofficial financing coming in through criminal activities and laundering. It just feels like so much could be done in the case of Ukraine and Israel if simply all of these handouts that keep these nations viable and like weaponized was just simply stopped.
Yeah. Well, there's so many people who I think are so disgusted with it and they're so over it. And like, I would count myself among those people where I have no patience for like the people who think that we need to continue to fund these wars because it's somehow benefiting us long-term to negotiate or whatever by continuing to fight a war that we have no business fighting. I think that's nonsense. That's bullshit. A lot of Trump's friends, Judge Andrew Napolitano, Colonel Douglas McGregor, who was one of his top military advisors at the end of his first term, all of them have publicly are just completely beside themselves with disgust at what President Trump's doing right now and what his administration is doing. And it's probably good, frankly, for President Trump to hear this coming from a lot of his friends, because I know he has a lot of other friends who are very happy about what's happening right now in Ukraine and in Israel. And I'm sure he's smart enough to understand why those people are happy and what's what. And I have no doubt that he's hopefully got some sort of a game theory plan in place to deal with all of this. But until all of that happens, like until we stop sending money to the IDF and then to go kill women and children in Gaza, we're going to we have a moral obligation, in my opinion, to continue to express our disgust and our resentment of it all. And just to openly say that I find Bibi Netanyahu to be a vile piece of shit who should be prosecuted for his war crimes. And I would say the Republican, like a lot of members in Congress, should also be prosecuted for their participation and capitulation with these war crimes in Russia, in Israel, in Gaza. I would be more than happy to see a lot of these people also prosecuted from the Uniparty. So, like I'm going to continue to push that position. There are a lot of people in MAGA who are going to take issue with that, and that's their right. But when it's all said and done, when the history is written on this era, the people that I'm talking about are going to be remembered as some of the worst people who ever lived. So.
Well said. I like that. All right, so let's do this. We're running the top of the hour. We have one more commercial to go through, and then I want to show people who are watching this episode the sneak peek of my upcoming film that'll be released on Friday, probably Friday night, I imagine, behind like a $3 paywall. It won't be much. So let's do that after a commercial break, and then also maybe we could look at some questions or remarks from the live audience or from the chats. So let me know if you pick up on anything that's worth bringing up into our conversation from the chats. So without further ado, a word from, what is it? Loaded Gun Coffee. Here we are. Wake up to the bold flavors of Loaded Gun Coffee, where passion, precision, and patriotism infuse every sip. As a veteran-owned business, we ensure each cup is steeped in pride and unwavering commitment. Our roasters handpick the finest coffee beans from around the world and have mastered unique brewing methods. Our skilled farmers cultivate the coffee to embody the essence of duty and honor in every meticulously crafted blend. But it's more than just coffee. It's a family enduring commitment to freedom, with military veterans tracing their legacy back to the Civil War, including Purple Heart recipients. Loaded Gun Coffee is a brewed testament of pride and honor. Dedicated to preserving the integrity and strength of our beloved nation, we proudly stand as fierce advocates for a secure border and a strong America. And we stay loaded. Stay loaded, Badlanders, with Loaded Gun Coffee. Visit badlandsmedia.tv/loaded and enter promo code Badlands for 10% off your purchase. That's badlandsmedia.tv/loaded, promo code Badlands. That was the most patriotic coffee ad I've ever read.
Dude, Loaded Gun Coffee is so legit. It's so good. So I highly recommend it. Yeah.
I have to try it. I gotta get some samples here.
Yeah, they've come to a few GARTs. So they're great. They're great people and great sponsors. So we appreciate their support.
I'll find out if they can deliver to Canada. I'm curious if I could try
talk to Jessica. Yeah. She might be able to she might be able to get you some answers.
Okay. All right, cool. Sweet. So before, I don't know if you have any quick closing thoughts before I play the trailer.
So this question here from 626 Suze, Matt Ghost, how do we handle those religious Israel first? Well, I think that Trump's handling them right now. And I think that the way that they're being handled is that they're basically the same way that Biden and the Democrats were handled, which was give them the stage, give them the microphone, and let them tell everybody exactly what it is they want to do. And that's what's been happening for the past year and a half, is that they have been allowed to basically do whatever it is that they want to do. And the world has now sees them for exactly what they are. And the world has called them out for it. And rather than, stepping back and backpedaling and being like, okay, sorry, like, just kidding, we weren't serious about that, they're doubling, tripling, and quadrupling down and being like, oh, no, we are definitely going to take all of Gaza and this is going to belong to us. And, middle finger if you disagree with us. And I think that arrogance is going to blow up in their face. It already kind of has. So I think they are on the path of no return, in my opinion. And I think that the current government of Israel, the political situation in Israel, is not going to last. I think it's going to collapse. And there's no longer going to be a Zionist state in Israel. I don't even know if there's going to be an Israel. There might be a country called Israel, but it's not going to be a Zionist state of Israel. I think it's going to be a far more democratic institution. And frankly, the demographics in such a situation would heavily favor the Arabs, like on a long-term scale. So I don't know. Like, we'll see what happens. But right now, I think the world is absolutely disgusted with what Israel is doing. That is my sense, and it's probably going to come to a head here sooner than later, because I don't think the patience is really there anymore.
Yeah, I can get behind that. I would just add, there's a lot we don't know. What I do know personally is that whatever the solution is going to look like, as you pointed out, it will have the solution will have certain characteristics. If Israel is going to become viable once again as an authentic nation state, which it's never been permitted to be because of these radicalizing elements that have a very fascist prejudice about or idea of what they think the world should be, that have taken too much of a dominant hold, both in the political and military, but also cultural domain within the Israeli governing structures. If you're going to have a restoration of something good, or the creation of something viable, then it has to look like what Yitzhak Rabin was moving towards with Arafat in the 90s around the Oslo Accord. It has to look something like that, with a restoration of the labor, the pro-labor, non-imperial sort of doctrine of Zionism that's been long gone. We haven't seen that in so long, like it's almost a forgotten memory. So it's still there, but it's not in power. So that sort of thing has to become active again. Go on.
Well, we'll finish your thought first, and then I'll respond to what you're saying.
And the other thing that is a concern that it's always on my radar, is that in my assessment, based on my research on occultism, past and present, is that there is an end times ritual of a mass extermination, a mass sacrifice of the entire Jewish people around some eschatological initiatory cleansing or purgative violent act that will involve creating an apocalyptic like cataclysm that will exterminate in maybe that'll be the Samson doctrine or the Samson option activation, perhaps with their nuclear warheads or something else. But that does seem to be something that certain dark forces have gamed out over many generations and would like for the Israelis to just do it to themselves. And also, bonus, annihilate a whole bunch of Arabs and Persians who have been living there for centuries and centuries at the same time, to maybe create some abstract new type of humanity out of the ashes. That's a concerning thing that's also in play, and it freaks me out a little bit. So whatever the solution's got to be, it's got to deal with that reality that there's something that's not operating for its own self-interest at the end of the day, but has this very bad theological crazy factor animating its motives, which is a tough bomb to defuse when you're dealing with that type of thing. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like.
It's something that I've wrestled with a lot because I've had a lot of people reach out and ask, like, why does it have to be like this? Sylvia in California, who's one of our listeners, Palestinian woman who lives in California, Palestinian Christian woman who lives in California. And I understand. It's like, why do so many people and again, it's hard for us to know exactly what's happening on the ground because it's 5th generation warfare and some of this stuff could be exaggerated, whatever. So all we can really do is respond to how the politics are unfolding. And that's really more of what I focus on, is how the high level, like what the politicians are saying, right? What the leaders are saying. What I have figured out though, and here's where I've kind of stuck my flag, is that the other Israeli leaders, it is very foolish to think that Netanyahu is the only person who wants what he's doing right now. I think that is the room temperature IQ take, is to think that if we can just get rid of Netanyahu, that is, and maybe that's not the right way to put it. Maybe it's not room temperature IQ, because there was a time where I thought maybe Netanyahu was just the guy who needed to go. But I have come to understand that it's not just Netanyahu who wants this. It is the opposition party, the people who, the other 52 seats in the Knesset that don't support him, the opposition party led by Yair Lapid, they also want war with Iran. They are open to a 2-state solution. They're actually like, let's make peace with Palestine. Let's make peace with Hamas and recognize Palestine. However, the red line that we're going to draw is twofold. Saudi Arabia can never have a nuclear reactor. That's number one. And number two, we have to have a war with Iran no matter what. And I think if you understand that, then you understand that, if you understand that's what their end goal is, and that's what their end game is no matter what, that removing Netanyahu is not going to undo that path. Like, that path is still going to be in front of you. It's just going to be a lot less obvious because they're going to be saying a lot of really flowery, nice stuff. Like, let's sign a 2-state solution. Let's join the Abraham Accords with Palestine. Like, let's normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. But we're still going to war with Iran. And a war with Iran means a war with Russia. It means a war with China, and it means World War III, which is what the Satanists ultimately want. So it seems to like keeping Netanyahu in power is, from Trump's position, is the most effective way to self-destruct the Zionist cause. Because right now there are, I want to pull up, and then we can play your video. The World Jewish Congress right now is livid with Bezalel Smotrich, because they say that Bezalel Smotrich has screwed everything up. Here it is. All right. So the president of the World Jewish Congress, Ronald Lauder, has criticized Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich at a conference in Jerusalem on Tuesday and accused the Israeli government of failing to understand the damage that his inflammatory statements on the Gaza war are causing to the country's reputation. Lauder directed his comments to Foreign Minister Gideon Saar, or Sayar, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, who was attending the WJC meeting. Let me tell you, a quote, let me tell you, all the good things that Israel is doing are being destroyed by Smotrich, said Lauder, because his statements about starving the people and destroying Gaza were played all over the world, and the prime minister has the chance to stop him from saying these things and will not do it. The question is, why not? End quote. His remarks were met with applause from many in the audience who were attending with various Jewish delegations from around the world. Sayar, in response, said simply that he took note of what Lauder had said. Smotrich, who leads the far-right religious Zionism party, has a history of inflammatory remarks about Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Earlier this month, he bragged that Israel was, quote, finally going to occupy the Gaza Strip, and then a day later predicted that the war-torn enclave would be totally destroyed within a matter of months, leaving its roughly 2.3 million residents totally despairing and confined to just a narrow swath of land. He also drew the ire of British broadcaster Piers Morgan on Tuesday over his comments on the decision to renew humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip after more than 2 months of a total blockade. Morgan, like Lauder, is generally a staunch supporter of Israel, although he has been increasingly critical of its strategy in the Gaza Strip. And so Piers Morgan here's a post from Piers Morgan where he says, how can anyone listen to what Smotrich says here and not conclude that he sounds like a genocidal maniac? Israel's government has been taken over by headbangers like him, and Netanyahu is just letting them do what they want. Who will stop them? And what he's quote posting a video where Smotrich says Gaza aid is just enough to avoid war crimes charges, but we will still annihilate the Strip. So and I remember like reading this the other day, Smotrich is saying, we're just going to let just enough aid into Gaza to avoid being charged with war crimes. But we're still going to go in there and annihilate all those people anyway. So what difference does it make? And yeah, I mean, he sounds like a genocidal maniac. He sounds like a total depraved sociopath, like the villain of, like a Bond villain. And it's kind of hilarious that in a really sick way that Netanyahu's not stopping these guys. The answer is he can't stop them, because if he loses the support of Bezalel Smotrich, remember, Itamar Ben-Gvir left the government back in January when Wickoff negotiated the hostage release deal, right?
Yeah.
Ben-Gvir only took 6 people with him. So Netanyahu went from a 68-seat majority to a 62-seat majority, right? He needs 60 seats in order to stay prime minister. Bezalel Smotrich has 15 seats under his control. So if Bezalel Smotrich leaves the government, and Ben-Gvir came back, by the way, after the whole hostage deal fell apart. He was like, oh, hell yeah, we're going to war again. I'm back. Smotrich leaves, though, so now Netanyahu's back up to 68 seats. Smotrich leaves, though, and Netanyahu's majority drops down to 53, and the government collapses and new elections are held. So he can afford to lose Ben-Gvir. He can't afford to lose Smotrich. That's why he's not telling Smotrich to shut his mouth. And I think, in my opinion, Trump knows all of this, and he has planned this out to create this environment, because Smotrich is Israel's worst enemy, as Lauder points out, like at the World Jewish Congress. He's like, why are you saying this stuff? You are doing irreparable damage to our reputation. But Smotrich can't stop because he's a sociopath. He's a narcissist.
Yep. That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Well, I always appreciate your hypotheses, and I do sincerely hope that Trump is on top of all of these things and knows how to manage this shit show, because it can get dark really fast, and there's just so many sick, disgusting swamp creatures and ideologues at play. It's really tough to rein that sort of thing in. So, inshallah, as the Muslims say.
Do you want to play that video?
Yeah, I do. All right. So here it is. And like I said, it's going to be the title is Roswell and the Birth of a New Legend. It's episode 4 of my ongoing series that I've been launching with my wife. We started this last year. They're all available for free, all episode 1, 2, and 3. Episode 4, like I said, will be behind a paywall for maybe a month or two, and then we'll make it available afterwards. I'm also going to be hosting a live stream with a Q&A on May 30th. People can buy tickets to that if they'd like. That's in the chat and in the comments section under this video on Rumble. But here's the little trailer that we made. Here we go.
In recent years, fascination with UFO government collusion has morphed from a niche interest reserved for fringe conspiracy theorists and ET conference attendees into something approximating a modern religion. While the subject of UFOs has typically occupied a place in the collective imagination and provided fuel for entertainment, it now appears that extremely powerful forces shaping mainstream media and government want as many people as possible to believe in aliens right now. From congressional hearings to dozens of whistleblower testimonies and whole channels such as the Sci-Fi Channel, Gaia Network, and History Channel going full ET disclosure, it appears that it is only a matter of time before officials within the US government announce that ETs have been colluding with government agencies for decades. Amidst all of the stories of crashed flying saucers, reverse-engineered alien technology, and supposed treaties with alien races, one thing remains a constant theme. Aliens are with us. They traveled from either far-off galaxies using advanced technology or jumped from another dimension into ours. And they're bad drivers. Before we can appreciate the origins of this modern myth, it will be useful to review the figure of Lawrence Rockefeller and something that happened in 1992.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's gonna kick ass.
Yeah, dude. Y'all have done a great job on that series.
Thanks. So yeah, no, so the idea will be to release it. I'll release it on my Substack for all Substack subscribers. Will get to watch it for paid subscribers. And there's a new service to some click tap thing where people can just pay $3 or $3.50 and watch it immediately. So that's another option that'll be there on Friday. And then after 4 or 6 weeks, we'll remove the paywall and people can watch it. But these things are time consuming and consume a lot of financial resources. So we're going to try this experiment of charging for once. We always make these for free, but we're going to do this for once. And yeah, the idea will just be to try to give people some clarity about how this is a magic trick. We're basically living in a giant magic trick that's been set up multi-generationally by certain occult Rosicrucian Satanists that have been planting the seeds to really declare war on Christianity and the entire Judeo-Christian, basically all Abrahamic faiths and all faiths that have some grounding in natural law. They've been preparing the groundwork. The war's been on for centuries, if not millennia, but now it's really on to get revenge for something that happened 2,000 years ago when a certain little idea was released onto the world that saw the annihilation of the Roman Empire, the dissolution of the dominance of the mystery cults that didn't disappear. They just went underground. They've been operating the entire time, basically, intervening to bring out the worst in humanity at every chance that they would get. And it's still latched on like a parasite. And so this operation has been there, overseeing the murder of JFK, which is going to play a big role in this current video. So how did a lot of the people behind the Lawrence Rockefeller disclosure operation play a direct role in the murder and cover up of JFK. That's going to be a theme that also will emerge in this video, and how they're all behind. They're connected to Aleister Crowley networks tied to Scientology. A lot of them are tied to Falun Gong, the thing that runs Epoch Times, which is run by a giant intergalactic messiah overlord figure, who's a clear MK Ultra type psyop, Li Hongji, the great master clairvoyant, healer, and channeler of alien demons and angels. That same guy who runs this cult is also playing into this whole big reset of our religious traditions around UFOs. So yeah, something to keep on the radar. I really want people to be on guard and have their sensors up, their spidey senses tingling amidst all of this stuff that's going to get louder and louder and crazier in the months ahead.
Yeah, nice. Well, do you want to go? Do you want to do some rants and read the boosts?
Yeah, sure. If we have boosts and rants, sure, go for it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's see. So we have a few rants. We have Mickey 1981. $5. President Trump is calling out South African president for genocide right in front of him in the Oval Office. Yeah, I think we have that concurrently running on Badlands. So I probably will. I'll probably jump over on that stream when we wrap up here, and maybe if I have a chance to maybe do some commentary, but it just depends on how much of it I catch. AH13, $5 to piggyback off of 626 Sue's. How do we handle those we see in our communities and churches that are Israel first? We can't call them deceived, which they are, but what's a good intro to normies? Well, I think one of the benefits of how this is being handled is that it's kind of been allowed to slow roll for so long that I think it's just kind of becoming undeniable of what's actually happening. And, even the World Jewish Congress is calling out the Netanyahu regime at this point. When you have the World Jewish Congress saying that the Israeli government is destroying the reputation of the state of Israel, that's pretty strong signal right there that, we're not being anti-Semitic when we say the same thing. So, everyone's going to have to make their own choices. Everyone's going to have to decide like where they fall on this stuff. Some people may decide they're just not going to make a decision one way or the other. And that's their prerogative. You can't force people to confront the truth. You can't force people to believe whatever it is you want them to believe. They just kind of have to figure it out on their own. And if you've been trying to red pill people in the past, you probably know that. You probably know that, sending people links, sending people information is not necessarily the most effective way to do it. You just kind of have to let them figure it out on their own timeline.
Yeah. It's really not, there's no formula for success. It's kind of a subjective thing, right? Like all of us listening had our own personal subjective set of crises, something that perplexed us that we just couldn't look away from, and we chose to hold on to it. But I know for myself, I had a lot of opportunities where people slapped me with hard facts that I was not ready for in my heart, and it bounced right off me. And I stayed in normie land for a long time. That I didn't have to, but I did because I was just not emotionally in the right place. So there's definitely no formula for success. There's definitely ways of being. Like there's certain, as the Chinese say, there's certain Daos, there's certain modalities, attitudes of love that we can be in that definitely enhance our ability to be effective instruments for truth, which assist people in not feeling like they're being sermonized. Nobody just transforms by being didactically told why they're wrong, why their thinking is wrong. That never transforms anybody. There's always like some sort of a loving attitude in the form of a dialogue that has to happen in some way for somebody to become self-aware or self-examining of their false axioms. So that's a process, and you certainly being able to have a bit of good humor about it, looking at ironies in how people are thinking versus evidence of reality, and being able to play with questions, helping them see like something that they should be perplexed by, but they didn't think enough about their assumptions to realize that they should be perplexed by an incongruity between their assumption about reality. Like, oh yeah, we're overpopulated. Of course we're overpopulated. It's like, okay, well, if that's true, you know, you could throw an example like, well, why is it that you could fit every human being, all 8 billion, into the area of Texas with, you know, like 32 square meters for each person, which is interesting that there's like people, that's just Texas alone. And that's a sufficient amount of space. Not that you'd ever want to do that, but if that's the case, then how could we say that the world is really overpopulated? Or are we just undereducated? Is maybe that there's just too much stupidity and not enough wisdom that's causing overpopulation to be a problem. You know, like there's ways of just trying to find a way to reframe somebody's assumptions for them in a way that helps them think about something outside the box that involves a solution to a problem that they haven't thought about. Or like, you know, Israel runs the world, you know, like, okay, well then if Israel's the cause of all of our problems, why are they located in the most geopolitically dangerous place in the world that would be the first to get blown up in any kind of world war? Like, it's the most, if you're going to be the top alpha dog controlling the world, you don't put yourself in the most dangerous fire spot in the world at the same time. You stay in a safe distance. So there's all sorts of paradoxes that can be played with that might open up better dialogue, but there's no solution. There's no formula.
Yeah, agreed. I think the short answer is just presenting contradictions, paradoxes, certainly with like Christians, is to, you know, present the genocide, because that's what it is. And any Christian should be repulsed by that. So boosts, we have one boost from PD Raman. I hope I'm saying that right. PDRAMAN. It is from yesterday. It's $100. Hi guys, great show as usual. Keep up the great work. Your show should be made part of every high school's history curriculum. Well, thank you, PD Raman. That is very, very generous of you. We really, really appreciate the support.
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, please hit the thumbs up. We'll be back next week. And check out Matt's new documentary, part 4 of the hidden hand behind UFOs. So, yeah, man. Well, thanks, Matt. And you have anything else coming up this week?
Yeah, always. But just focus on the hidden hand behind UFOs, guys. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I'll say too, subscribe. If people subscribe to my Substack as well, I'm going to be hosting a peace roundtable featuring some high-level geopolitical experts on Sunday at 11 a.m. I do this every 2 Sundays, and it's a new initiative. It's going to be tied to some pretty big things that Alex Craner had referenced when we interviewed him a few weeks back.
Nice.
So that's going to be a fun initiative. Got to have you on actually as an expert one of these days too, to speak also on the forum. But that's going to be something that people will get access to if they subscribe to my Substack. So I'll just throw that out there as well to plant some seeds mentally. And otherwise, thank you, Gordon. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and looking forward to meeting everybody again next week, same time. Take care.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for joining us, and don't forget to hit the thumbs up on this video. And a special thank you to all of our advertising partners. Please remember to shift your dollars to support those businesses that support Badlands Media.